everyone. I'm April O'Leary, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Kendra Petty's book launch party. I don't know if any of you have been part of a Zoom book launch before, but it's a really exciting event. If you could start by making sure that you're muted, and then you'll have a chance to unmute later after we go through some of the exciting stuff about writing and publishing a book. And that's really the point of this book launch Zoom, is to celebrate Kendra and everything she's done to get her book out of her mind and her heart onto paper and out into the world. And today is the day her book is born and a brand new author's born. So I'm so excited to host you tonight, Kendra. Thank you for trusting us to bring you through to the finish line. And I want to just open the floor and let you welcome all of your amazing people on here.
Yeah, so incredible for so many people. Todd Tucker, I see you, Nancy, Nicole Lake, Claudia. I think I've said hi to most everybody else, but thank you all so much for joining. Such an incredible group. I'm so fortunate to have so many wonderful friends and family members. So thank you for being here.
So the way that the book launch goes, just so everyone knows, is we talk a lot about what it's like to become an author, because most people haven't gone through that experience. And so Kendra's willing to kind of let you peek behind the curtain into what it's really like to get a book out into the world. And how we got connected was through Jessica Jones. And Jessica's on the call tonight, and I want to bring her on. She's an amazing editor. She and I connected a number of years ago and have professionally done some work together. And she was the first one to connect with Kendra. So Kendra, I would love for you to introduce Jessica and you two to talk about how it was to actually get your book out on paper. What was the process like? How did you guys work together? And more importantly, how long did it take?
Right. Great. Well, Joan,
Thanks, April.
some of you have already met Jessica. So Jessica was my ghostwriter for this book. And some of you have already met Jessica. She came to a women's symposium that some of us were at in Hartford, Connecticut, through a group that we're a part of called Amplify, through our work. And Jessica's one of our speakers. But backing up to, I don't know, four and a half years ago, when I started a process of sort of healing through a lot of lifelong trauma and tragedy, that just was this continuous cycle. 5 years ago, I kind of hit a wall and said, I've got to figure out how to contain this and how to find peace and have a peaceful life going forward. So I started doing a lot of really self-healing and digging in and learning and reading and trying to figure out how I could change the trajectory of my life to find a peaceful life instead of all this insanity that just continued to happen to me again and again and again throughout my life. And through that process of just, really finding my own path for healing, I decided that I needed to write down some of the insanity that I'd been through. And a lot of it is really quite unbelievable. Some of it is very relatable, but some of it is pretty unbelievable, even to me to this day. And so I decided, since I didn't know how to read or write, that I needed to find somebody to help me write it. And so I started on my hunt for a ghostwriter, and I had quite a few proposals submitted to me. I interviewed probably 6 or 7 over the phone. I decided in that process that I really wanted to find a woman to help write my book or my story. Originally, I didn't want it to be a book. I didn't want to publish it. I just wanted it documented for myself and my family and maybe a few friends. But I decided I really wanted it coming from a woman's voice, and I wanted someone with humor, because humor is important to my life. I come from a funny family. My father's very funny. My brother's very funny. I used to be very funny. I kind of lost my humor along the way because of all this craziness that happened to me. But part of the healing was to get my humor back and find humor in life. And so I felt it was important that I find somebody that had some humor. And then once we get into kind of writing the book, we found that there were so many crazy stories that kind of took a dark turn not everything was so funny. So it was kind of hard to find the humor. But anyway, I narrowed it down to a few people, and I really felt pretty strongly about Jessica. I flew out to New York. She lives in New York City. I flew out, met her, and it was an instant connection. But Jessica's a really accomplished person, and I'll let her speak, but I'd like to introduce you, Jessica. She is a ghostwriter, but previous to her career in writing and editing, she was an attorney. She then went into editing and publishing. She worked for two of the big publishing houses, Random House and Simon and Schuster. She was responsible for not just publishing books, but also taking books from books to movies and books to TV. And I'll steal your thunder on this one. Jessica found Legally Blonde in the trash and turned it into a movie. Excuse me, I have a cold. And so she's done some really great things. She's also a published author. She owns a multimedia company that's doing great work. That's Jessica Jones, my ghostwriter, and we worked together for 3.5 years to write this book. And it was a lot of work, but it was cathartic during the process. And so there was some good healing for me. She was almost like a therapist at times. So Jessica, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm sure everybody else would on the process and how it was to work with a super type A personality like me.
Well, you're right. It was an instant connection, and meeting you was, I've done this a lot, and I've met a lot of people who want to tell their stories for all kinds of reasons. And, you were very, instantly very charming and, lovely to hang out with, and clearly someone who I felt I knew that this was going to take a long time. Writing a book, everyone thinks it's how long does it take me to type this? And that has nothing to do with how much time it takes to write a book. The amount of time it takes to write a book is the amount of time that it takes for you to face whatever it is that you need to say.
Sure.
And sometimes what you want to say and what you need to say, the real reason you're writing the book, are two different things. And it can be very jarring along the way when you realize there's a fork in the road, and you could continue telling the story that you think you want to tell, or you can tell the story that is sort of nagging at you, that's saying, no, tell me, because this is the real you, not the story you've been telling yourself for a very long time. And most people who want to write memoirs do it for a catharsis. And, there are all kinds of reasons that get layered on top of that need for a catharsis. And it could be wanting to educate other people, or it could be wanting to soothe other people, or it could just be like, you know what, and in your case, this is partly just a little bit of it, but it's like, I have to learn how to laugh at this again. And if I can make other people laugh, then that's going to feed back to me, and I'm going to, find that humor in my own crazy cuckoo cuckoo life. So, you kept asking me, how long is this going to take? From day one, first day that we started, you're like, I need a schedule. I'm sure that everyone on this call who works with you in your industry is like, yes, the scheduling, the whip cracking. And so for anyone who wants to write about themselves, I think the first thing to know is that being really kind to yourself and understanding that you've got a lot of really deep digging to find the real persona, the real you. I hate to say find your truth, because that's so at this point, but because if you don't do that, you don't find your readership, because everyone can smell BS in a second. But if you're authentic, no matter what your story is, if you're authentic and honest and raw, it's very hard for other people to just look away. Did something just happen?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. It's very hard for other people to look away when someone is just being so radically raw. And I think being that way gives other people permission to do it. You know, it's okay to be your most ugly self, along with your most gorgeous and funny and all the other things. You know, and Kendra, we talked a lot about the process, none of which you believed, but we talked about the process a lot. And I kept telling you, Kendra, we're going at breakneck pace. It took me 10 years to get to the point where I could write my memoir. So, you know, this is nothing. And you're like, it's not good enough. So, and, you know, for a ghostwriter, part of the process is getting to know your subject and just seeing how you reacted to being pushed and being asked questions and being forced to talk about things that you really didn't want to, taught me a huge amount about you. And for anyone who wants to write on their own, asking yourself really, really uncomfortable questions and, you know, sort of putting it to yourself as though you were interviewing a stranger is really a great way to pick the threads apart. But for Kendra, my experience with Kendra is that as crazy as it was, I think it says a lot about Kendra, because this is not my experience with most authors that I work with. We've become fast friends. And I can't imagine not having Kendra in my life. So that's a little bit, you know, I don't want to ramble on forever, but I don't know if that answered your question of, you know, what's it like? But that's part of it. There's also a lot of drinking, screaming, crying, laughing, badgering, hectoring, and teaching you to read things, and finding the language to express who you are. And Kendra, I think it would be amazing if you told everyone on this our story about trying to find a way for you to find the language to express yourself.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. Well, the crying was really you, not me, because
the crying was all me.
my tear doesn't work, but it's kind of a funny story. Jessica and I, probably after a couple of years of working together, it took us 3.5 years to write this book. And I thought it would be 9 months to a year. So it took a lot longer, but when we were probably two and a half years into it, Jessica called me one day and said, you know, your stories are incredible and very moving and unbelievable and so much detail. She said, this is going to make a great book. And originally, again, when I first started working with Jessica, I did not want to publish. I just wanted all this insanity documented. And as we went along, Jessica was really encouraging me to consider publishing. Oh, no, I don't know. I don't think so. And we finally got to a point where I said, okay, you know, I will consider this. I will think about it, but you know, it leaves me very vulnerable. There's some very personal things in this book. I mean, it really just puts everything on display for everyone to read about me. And it's that makes me very trepidatious. But she kind of coached me and held my hand through it. And I finally got to the point where I said, you know, I do want to share this. And part of that was my healing from all this trauma was I want to find, I have survived all this insanity and all these, you know, I've escaped death so many times and so many other crazy things. There's got to be a reason why I'm still alive. And so I did feel like through that process that maybe my book could help some people, because there are some certainly relatable things, some very unrelatable things. And so I finally decided to publish. And so then the work began to really make it a book that people would embrace, could understand, could follow and read. It was less about documenting all the events and more about making it a good book. that flowed and that made sense and that people could understand, and all the grammar was correct. And as I learned to read and write through the process, then I could understand that it was going to be a good book. But anyway, 2.5 years into it or so, maybe closer to 3, Jessica calls me and says, listen, you know, these incredible stories, it's gonna be a great book, but a lot of facts and a lot of detail. There's really no emotion behind it. So we really need to get to the emotion. She said, so we're gonna set up some appointments where I'm gonna call you and I'm gonna share some of your stories and we're gonna dig in and you're gonna tell me how it made you feel. And I said, okay, well, we can try it. And honestly, these stories, a lot of these stories.
That's not what you said.
What did I say?
You said, could you write how I feel?
Right, I did. I said, can't, look, you're the writer, can't you? Right? Fair enough. Fair enough. And honestly, in talking to, in telling Jessica all these stories over several years, a lot of these, it was the first time I was telling anybody any of these stories, or at least for a very long time. But a lot of these, Jessica was the first time to hear these stories. So that already made me very vulnerable. And so now having to talk about feelings this is not my forte. So we set up our first appointment, and I can't remember which story it is, but you know, Jessica reads part of it to me and she says, so how did that make you feel? And I was, you know, I don't know, angry or sad, whatever the story was. And, you know, she keeps pushing me and, you know, to dig deeper, and I keep pushing back. Like, I don't, you know, it made me mad. Or it made me sad. I don't know what to tell you. What do you want me to say? Well, there's got to be more. And what we discovered was that my language for emotions, not that I don't feel, because I feel very deeply, but my ability to express those emotions verbally, I really only have three words, 5 words in my vocabulary, but 3 of them are emotions: sad, happy, and mad. And that was very frustrating for Jessica. It was frustrating for me because it was this push-pull, and I was like, I don't know, it made me sad. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. And finally I said again, I was like, can't you just do it? Can't you just put in your emotions? She was like, no, that's not how this works. And so we hang up, kind of frustrated with each other. And she's like, you know, we'll talk next weekend. I said, fine. So I spent a few days thinking about it, and I felt bad. Like, we didn't argue, but we were just very frustrated with each other. And I called her back about 3 days later, and I said, listen, I've been thinking about this, and I do want this to be a really good book. I want readers to be able to connect with it emotionally and feel, since you say that's how people read. I haven't read a book since I don't know how to read, but I said, so I really want to figure out this emotions thing. And Jessica goes, well, considering you just said this emotions thing and called it this emotions thing, I'm pretty sure we're never going to get there. I said, great, does that mean you'll do it? And she goes, I guess I'll have to.
But you did. You finally, I think, you know, and this is the case with so many artistic endeavors. It's that moment when you feel horrible and you're so frustrated and you just despair of ever saying, doing, painting, sculpting, whatever it is that's in you, that's the catharsis. And that's when the explosion happens. And in your case, miraculously, like 10 more words came out. And then another 5. And after, I don't know, maybe a month, we found what your vocabulary was.
Well, you know, I was Googling all that and looking for synonyms, so.
Yes, there's a lot of thesaurus.com. But I think that, you know, you're bringing up a really good point about reading, actually. And this is the key to writing is being a reader. And it doesn't matter if you want to read, you know, the steamiest 50 Shades of whatever, or if you like to read sci-fi, or if you like to read literary fiction. It doesn't matter. It's that the more you read, the more you understand how to access that part of you that communicates with other people, because you find what communicates to you in writers that you like. Obviously books, not like, you know, a blog necessarily, but, you know, and anyone who is very nervous about, you know, I could never do that. I could never write a book and I could never, whatever. That's not true. If you're a reader, you may not be the best writer who ever lived on the planet, but you have the ability to use that outlet. And what I saw it do for Kendra was possibly why we are now stuck with each other as lifelong friends, because the intensity of the process is undeniable. And if you give yourself over to the creative process, you know, no one leaves the room the same. No one gets out alive, and no one leaves the room the same. And in my experience doing this, generally, it's always for the better. But Kendra, did I leave anything out?
No, but I agree. We on 2 points. One, I'm a big believer now that stories need to be told, and you taught me that. And I am glad that I'm telling my story, even though, as you know, there's again a lot of trepidation behind it for numerous reasons. But stories do need to be told, and this I know now. And you're a forever friend now, and I'm very grateful for that friendship. So.
I love it. Well, what was really exciting for me actually was that once you decided that you wanted to publish, we went on down the road of figuring out what the best way to do that was going to be. And, you know, we were talking about major publishing houses, and, you know, the proposal process and all of that it's just really exhausting. And then I remembered, I was like, Kendra is the most hands-on person who ever lived on planet Earth. She needs to find someone who is going to give her the same kind of love and attention that I have. And I was like, ha, I know who that is. I'm so happy. And so I called April, and I hadn't spoken in like a year. And I called her up, and it was, you know, were we in COVID already? I think so.
Oh, we were past
No?
COVID.
We're way past,
COVID?
this has been not that long ago.
Right. Oh my God.
That's
I don't
why
know what's happening anymore. I'm like on another planet, but I called April and said, this is what's going on. And what do you think? And April very generously said, send her over. And then that's where this story picks up. April, that's you. What happened next?
Well, I just adore Jessica, and I can see the relationship that the two of you have just forged together. And I have also laughed at some of those stories about trying to get Kendra to be more rich with her emotional language and all of that. I think that's just, you know, it shows how much you poured into the project as well, Jessica, and Kendra, that you were willing to go through with it. Because it's not easy to dig through all of that stuff. And so when Jessica introduced us to Kendra, they had a nearly completed manuscript that was over 100,000 words. And
Heather's laughing. I see Heather laughing.
And Kendra was also like ready to be done, sort of like Jessica feeling like, how soon are we going to get this book written? And then 3 years later, you're still in the process. And I knew Kendra, I'm a type A personality. I could spot it. It's like, if you spot it, you got it, you know? So we have a speaker event that Kendra's going to be flying to Naples, Florida for next Friday, March 17th. And I think you had connected us, Jessica, maybe in October. Would you say that's about right, Kendra?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. Maybe
It was
November.
So it was like within 6 months, I would say.
It was
or less.
November. I know
It was
well.
November.
Yeah, I know it well.
November. And I said, you know what? Jessica is the utmost professional, and I know that it's not going to be we've gotten manuscripts in before in a first draft where it's like a major overhaul. So I had full confidence that this was not a major overhaul situation and that we could get this thing done and turned around and out the door so that you could be speaking at our event in March on stage with the book done. And that's what we did. And so I was so excited to have a type A author who's ready to just like ready, set, let's go. And so Kendra came on board, and Heather, who's our head editor here, was gracious enough to run the whole editorial project in thirds. So we kind of divided it up between Heather and Kat and Boris. And we did a line edit, a little bit of, rearrangement, not too much, and then proofreading to get everything done in time for this event. But I want to bring Heather on and talk a little bit about bringing in the manuscript and how that was for you. And Kendra, talk about digging back into the manuscript in this process, because that was also, I think, fairly intense.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was. April gave me a little bit of a heart attack in November when she told me we had a manuscript that was, I think it maybe was 130,000 words when it came to us, that she wanted to get done in 3 months. And normally this is like 3 books in one for people who don't know books. Most books are 30, 40,000 words. So this is a pretty long book. So I said, you want us to do 3 books to line edit, proofread, layout, cover, and have that all ready in 3 months. And normally it takes about 6. And I was like, April, like I was kind of speechless. And she said, well, what about like it just all hands on deck, everyone jumps on, right? And once I met Kendra, I said, we'll do whatever we have to make this happen, because we so wanted her to be able to speak at our event. But surprisingly enough, we actually had to do more than you probably thought, right? Kendra, you thought you were done.
I did.
But the thing is, you and Jessica worked together for 3.5 years, right? And so then you have a whole fresh team with fresh eyes, right? Seeing things that you both couldn't see anymore because you were still in it, right? And one of the things I love to share is that there's always more rounds of editing in a book than you could ever imagine. And especially for Kendra, because she deserved, after all these years of working, to have the absolute best book that we could have. And probably the biggest change when you came to us right away, April and I said, well, we want to change the title, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so originally the working title was called Sick. And, it was a really good idea, I think. Jessica honed that in. Jessica and I went through a number of titles and finally settled on Sick. Although one of them originally was I Can't Believe I'm Not Dead, but we narrowed it down to Sick, thinking maybe I Can't Believe I'm Not Dead was too long. But the thought process behind Sick, and it was, Jessica had a good way of explaining this, was there's been a lot of sick in my life between, sick people, sick things that have happened to me. I've been sick from some of the things that people have done to me. I've had a lot of mentally ill people in my life, especially growing up. And so sick seemed to be befitting at the time, but the more we worked through it, I thought, if I were walking through an airport and looking in the bookstores, I often do, and looking at book covers, and I saw Sick, I don't know, it'd be kind of off-putting to me. And so I wasn't 100% married to it, but I thought it was a good working title, and we'll see where we go with it. And so when you all kind of said, let's talk about some other ideas, the first thing I said was, well, I've always liked I Can't Believe I'm Not Dead. I think originally it was I Can't Believe I'm Not Dead Yet. And then I was like, well, we should drop the yet, because I intend to live another 50 or so years. So I Can't Believe I'm Not Dead. But yeah, you all embraced it and liked it. And then you all helped write the subtitle, Escaping Abuse, Occult, Attempted Murder, and Other Insanities, a story that cannot be true, but is.
And that was a lot of fun, wasn't it, Kendra? It took a couple of weeks of playing with that because we wanted to capture so many things that Kendra has experienced in a title that would entice people, that was accurate, but also entice people. So we played around with those words a lot. Kendra, talk a little bit about what it was like to have to dive back in, because we did push you again on a few other places, right? That Jessica had already pushed you, and then we pushed you again on a few places as you had 3 editors and working at the same time, right, on your manuscript. What was that like for you?
It was a lot. It was pretty overwhelming, actually, because, you know, I'm really busy with work, and some other projects that I'm working on. And so having 3 editors all at once, be like, can you go through these changes and let us know what you think in these edits? And, you know, there were Saturday nights where I was like, oh my God, give me a break. And, you know, and having to reread a lot of that was very hard, because I thought I was done with it. And I think I said to you all on one of our first calls, I never want to read this book again, because it's just emotionally so hard for me. And there were, yet again, plenty of Saturday nights where I was making a cocktail to be able to get through parts of that book, and with some sanity. So it was a lot of work, but you guys were amazing, and you were supportive, and full of love and help. So I'm very grateful.
There was one point where I just started accepting the changes from the other editors. I'm like, if there's something major, I'll check with Kendra, but let's just make this easy, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So at one point, and what Kat is not on, Boris is on, but one of the things I love that Kat, one of our editors, said, she said, I just cannot wait to see this movie. She said, I just know this is going to be a movie. And so I am super excited for when this is made into an incredible movie, because it really has the makings for that.
Oh, well, I do remember that Kat asked you, or April, when she first, as she was digging into this and starting her editing, I think emailed one of you and said, is this fiction or nonfiction?
She did ask. She said, is this fiction? I said, believe it or not, it is not fiction, right? Like, and she was just dumbfounded, right? And anyone who knows your story, probably many people on here do, but when they get to read the book, I think anyone who reads the book, even if they know you well, will learn some things and have some stories. And you just did such an amazing, excellent job of sharing all of that.
Yeah,
in the book.
actually, most people don't know my story. I don't.
So this is,
I haven't talked about. So some close family, close family members know, and some close friends know. But outside of that, most people on this call do not, because I don't talk much about it. But now everybody will know.
For that, for saying that, and I'm putting it in the chat, Kendra's website, where you can go get the signed copies, which she will personally be signing and sending out, paperback and hardback. So there's a limited number. So I would say get copies. But so Boris, I want to give him a quick chance to talk about a little bit about maybe a story that stood out to you while you were editing, or something that you want to share with Kendra about your part of the editorial process.
Well, it was very entertaining to just read the whole narrative, the whole chain of events. Some, sort of unbelievable. Yes, it could be a movie, for sure. I think what stood out to me was the whole episode with the poison pods, and how insidious that whole process was. And I think you can begin to, as you said in the book, Kendra, doubt your own sanity after a while. Is this really happening to me? How could this be happening to me? And that to me was like, wow, I'm reading that and it's like, no, really? So that was pretty gripping, I thought.
Yeah,
That whole episode.
that was sort of my culmination of trauma, and then the aftermath of probably 13 years of disease and illness from being exposed to the poisons for so long, and almost dying. And it is really unbelievable. Fortunately, I have there's a small group of folks on this call today that I consider very good friends that worked with me when this happened, and were very supportive. And I won't name their names, because again, all the names of the guilty have been changed to protect the innocent, and they and I are the innocent. And so I won't name their names, but you guys know who you are. And I'm so grateful for your friendship. and for your support during that time, and for your love and for your continued friendship and support. And one person in particular stands out. He's like a brother to me, and you know who you are. I'll be seeing you later this week, but I love you so much, and you really took care of me during that time and worked so hard to protect me from all that craziness. So I'm very grateful. But you know, the good thing is I have people that can vouch for all these different stories, especially that crazy last one that happened to me. So.
And that's the thing that I think even in the subtitle, you know, we were talking about changing the title, the subtitle, we worked through so many different iterations of that. And one of them, it was like 1 or 2 versions before the final. And it dawned on me, what was it? It was like, it was like escaping insanity, I think was the beginning.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Escaping insanity, a cult, and because the insanity referred to the childhood experience. But I said, you know, if I don't know you and I don't know this book, I might think that you escaped your own insanity.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a little confusing.
Right.
And so that's where we even reworked the subtitle, because coming at it from I don't know anything about this person, and I want to be as direct and not misleading. So, and I think that putting that a story that cannot be true, but is also classified sort of to Kat's point of like, is this true? Is this real? Is this made up? And I think that was a really important point, even though it's a little long, but I think the whole way the subtitle encapsulates what the book is about is so powerful.
Yeah, no, you're right. That subtitle went through a lot of iterations, and I think we had thought we had kind of honed it down to escaping insanity, abuse, occult, attempted murder, and a story that cannot be true but is. And then I don't know if it was Heather or you said, oh, that's too long, that's too many things. And I remember saying, oh, well, then let's cut out abuse, because everybody gets abused. And your face and Heather's face were like, what? And then we ended up reworking it yet again. And I think right towards the end, somebody said, well, yeah, but that escaping insanity makes it sound like it's your insanity. I said, well, I'm not insane, so we definitely have to change that. It's other people's insanity that I escaped. So I'm glad that we reworked that.
And I'm so glad that throughout this process, you know, the whole team approach to writing a book, I think without Jessica, this would have never come to be, right? And then without the team to really bring all these other kind of angles and perspectives. And so I think there's this misnomer that people who write a book do it in isolation. You know, they go shut themselves in a room and they just keep writing. And that couldn't be further from the truth for most people. It does require conversations, especially when it's personal stories, and getting to the real matter. Like Jessica said, the story you think you want to tell versus the story that needs to be told, and how do you tell it? So part of that team process is the design of the book. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because I love the personal nature of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you have your book there, you could hold it up and show your hand or whatever, but it's a little, yeah, it's a little foggy on my side, but that's Kendra's hand with her lucky tattoo. And yep. And so she came up with that idea through, you know, some conversations in her personal world. And I thought, you know, it's just perfect, because really the whole crux of the story is that how lucky you are to be where you are now. So it's not a story without a redemptive element. You know, you have that. I've worked through a lot of this. It's not a Debbie Downer at the end, like this is all the tragedy and it's still going. This is all the tragedy, and I've risen, I've chosen to have a great life despite all of the crap that happened along the way. And so it was fun, because I remember saying, send me pictures of your hand. So she was sending me pictures of her hand, and then our designer was trying to take them, and she's like, no, I need them on a white background. I need the lighting better. I need, you know, so we were trying to work on getting the hand exactly right. And I think it really came out so beautifully. And let's talk a little bit about the color elements and the way that, you know, that you wanted to have that really clean and very sharp look.
Yeah, all along, I always thought red, black, and white, like, again, walking through airports, looking at, because I never go into bookstores, but walking through airports, I would always look at bookstores, and I travel a lot. So, what pops to me? And so I always thought red, black, and white, a black background with red and white verbiage, and I wanted it very clean. And so I can't take credit for the hand. I mean, I can take credit for my hand and the tattoo, but I can't take credit for the hand being on the book cover, because it was not my idea, because I wanted something very clean. And so we were almost done. You, I think Heather, myself, and Jessica, that your book cover designer, we were just about done. And a friend of mine, Amber, I don't know if Amber's on the call or not, but a friend of mine, I sent her your iterations and said, what do you think? And she said, why isn't your hand on the cover? What do you mean? She goes, that's your whole, that's your whole fight. That's your whole story, that you got that tattoo because it was your daily reminder of how lucky, blessed, and fortunate you are. And that really, that's my mantra. For me, lucky, blessed, and fortunate are synonymous. And I'm very blessed in my life. I'm very fortunate. I'm lucky to be alive. And I have an amazing life, and I worked really hard to get here, and I'm just so happy to still be alive. And so, I really thought about what she said, and I said, well, I'll talk to April, but we're kind of done with the book cover. And we were on a call like a day or two later, and I brought it up, and you were like, oh, let me see. And you went on my Instagram and you saw the picture, and then I finally got on video and showed you my hand. And you went back to Jessica and you had her do some iterations, and there we have it. My lucky hand on the cover of the book. And it really turned out great, because I was like, oh, it's going to be too busy, I don't know, but it really looks fantastic. And it really is a message that I can't believe I'm not dead. I am very lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky in my life. I'm lucky to have so many amazing friends and a wonderful family, and to have my health back, and lucky to have been able to write this book and work with O'Leary Publishing and Jessica to get it done.
It was so much fun, and Dustin's on the call. I don't know if he's able to turn his camera on, but I do want to screen share really quick. And thank you to Jerome for saying he just got a signed copy, very easy to purchase through the link. But I wanted to sort of show off what we have going here. So Kendra really wanted everyone to be able to get a preview of the book. And so let's talk about the preview, because we didn't want to just give someone the first, 5 pages. She wanted to drop you right into the middle of the story. And so if you get the free preview, which we recommend you do, as well as buy the book, then you could get a little taste of it. Talk about what you chose to put in that free preview.
It was, a lot of the stories are very dark, and this is a very dark story, but I think the beginning of it really, it takes you into what Boris mentioned, the me getting poisoned and getting very sick, and being sick for 12 years, and the attempted murder piece to the book. And so in really trying to figure out what the best part of the book, without giving a whole chapter, what's a little snippet, I felt like, I think it was the beginning of chapter 11. Is it?
It was 11, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah, so if you want to read the beginning of chapter 11, you can get that here. And then this is the back cover copy that is, if you flip to the book over, and then Kendra has the hardcover signed and the soft cover signed. And then of course you could get unsigned copies at any point from Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And please, we request leave a review on Amazon about how much you love the book when you read it. That really helps the book get more traction and more discoverability on Amazon. And I'll show you that it's all here. There's the Kindle version, hardcover and paperback, and Kendra's headshot